Welcome, folks, to our sixth episode of The Virtual Psychiatrist. I am your host, Dr. Rifai. We seem to be going strong. Today, at the request of doctors on social media, we will discuss podcast augmented with artificial intelligence, wink, wink AI generator.
Well, Dr. Rifai podcasting done by those robots from that Arnold. What's his name? Movie? Which one? Oh, the Terminator. The one that launched nuclear missiles and tried to end the world.
No, Teresa. This a benevolent artificial intelligence that helps us produce podcasts quickly and in a reasonable price.
Well, Dr. Rifai, whatever it is, I want my royalties. But tell our audience, how did things start with this AI podcasting for you?
When I first started this podcast, I have to admit it wasn't something I had envisioned years ago while practicing telepsychiatry. But as with many things in life, one opportunity led to another. You know, early on, back in 2006, telehealth was much like the Wild West, uncharted, lacking clear frameworks. Those experiences taught me adaptability, and I was determined to share my journey with others who might also be navigating uncharted waters, clinically, professionally, or even personally. So, bringing telepsychiatry into homes evolved into bringing these conversations into earbuds.
And it wasn't just technical adaptation either, right? Like for you, it seems deeper than the tools you're using. It's your passion for connecting with people. That's what hooks me. You're not just a telepsychiatrist, you're a storyteller. You're like the bard of virtual medicine.
Thank you, Teresa. And that's the heart of podcasting, isn't it? Telling stories that matter, ones that resonate. Ironically, despite my academic rigor, producing a podcast was perhaps one of the more intuitive things I dove into. It blended speaking plainly yet meaningfully with stepping away from clinic formalities.
Exactly. And, okay, since we're on storytelling, let's talk about how you inspired me here. I think my past life as a piano teacher collided with podcasting when I realized it's about rhythm. Not just in terms of timing, but the flow of ideas. I love finding ways to sculpt tech into something artistic, like how the quirks of editing can make raw conversations shine. It's like, a duet.
A perfect metaphor, Teresa. And creativity in podcasting isn't just technical mastery, it's the willingness to be human. Case in point, someone who's led by that example is Dr. Jarrett Patton. He's produced over 150 episodes, and his advice to love the process itself, it's invaluable. Podcasting might invite complexity, but aligning it with your passions makes it joyful, even fulfilling.
Dr. Patton, tell me about this fella. You seem to know him.
Well, Teresa, we worked together at a local hospital in Pennsylvania, and he was the president of the medical staff, and he faced awful false allegations that derailed his career. He, like me, went to trial, and the jury found him not guilty like myself, but he retransformed himself, and I am following in his footsteps.
Absolutely. And you know what I love? That he doesn't sugarcoat anything. Like the grit and grind of consistency. But fun fact, his first episodes, not all perfect, right? And that's where the magic lies. You start, you grow, and laugh through it.
Exactly. And I think this brings out a point we both believe in: the importance of showing up authentically. Whether it's my perspective from medicine or your artistic intuition, podcasting thrives when the you shines through.
Totally. Because perfection is overrated, but passion, that's irresistible.
And speaking of passion, Teresa, I think one of the toughest battles new podcasters face is their own mindset. There's this immense pressure to have everything perfect from the start. So many get stuck, worried about saying the wrong thing or sounding unpolished. But as we were just saying, that imperfection, that spark of humanity, is where podcasting comes to life.
Oh, totally. It's like that time Dr. Kelly Casperson shared her story. Remember that? She talked about her early episodes and how she used to read questions verbatim, her voice all stiff and rehearsed.
Yes, and how she gradually found her rhythm by embracing honesty, humor, and some trial and error. The confidence came from simply showing up, mistakes and all. And what stuck with me was her view that the process itself improves your voice, your message.
Exactly. And then you have Dr. Wu Ming, who candidly admits his first podcast with a partner was, how did he put it? A learning experience, to say the least. But you know what makes him incredible? He didn't quit. He refined his vision, started Bootstrap MD by himself, and kept showing up. Now, 140 episodes later, he's killing it.
Yes, and I admire that resilience. In fact, that's what I try to remind anyone embarking on this. Find joy in the refinement. Whether you stumble or soar at first, the act of continuing shapes your path forward. Which reminds me, another critical element is finding your niche.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like Dr. Patel and Dr. Kirpaker with their podcast on women's pain health. These two mastered that sweet spot, balancing education with empathy. Their Instagram reels? So creative, but also rooted in science. It's a perfect example of standing out by being specific and relatable.
Absolutely. They identified a gap, a deeply underserved topic, and leaned into it. They didn't try to appeal to everyone. Instead, they addressed the needs of their audience passionately and authentically. This is such a valuable lesson. The narrower your focus, the broader your impact.
And that goes right back to creativity. Because niche finding isn't just analytical, it's artistic, like music. Each podcast is like a melody, and you have to figure out your unique rhythm. Honestly, even stumbling plays into it, because who nails the perfect harmony on their first try?
I love that parallel, Teresa. And when we talk about rhythm, it's not just technical. It's the flow of ideas, the pacing of conversations. It's also about creating a space where your voice and your audience's voice can resonate. Speaking of harmony, Dr. Patel and Dr. Kirpaker emphasized something crucial: constantly learning from their audience.
Yes. And their advice on testing content and adapting based on feedback, that kind of responsive creation, it's brilliant. Honestly, it reminds me of how musicians fine-tune their performance by reading the room. You're playing for the crowd, not just yourself.
Exactly, because what makes any performance or podcast authentic is connection. If you're not connecting with people, the content doesn't land. And achieving that isn't about perfection. It's about persistence and intentionality.
Oh, persistence, the unsung hero of podcasting. If learning how to fail gracefully and grow forward isn't the ultimate key here, I don't know what is.
And speaking of connection and intentionality, Teresa, it's fascinating how technology can assist us in refining those very elements. Which brings me to something I've been looking forward to discussing: AI in podcasting. Let me ask, have you ever wondered how AI can take a jumble of ideas and turn them into a podcast script or outline that feels not just coherent, but professionally polished?
Oh, like all the time. I mean, I'm the person who used to scribble ideas on napkins at coffee shops. But AI? It's like having an overachieving intern, right? Organizing messy thoughts, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and, oh, catching those embarrassing typos.
Exactly. One of the features I find most remarkable is how the software analyzes information I feed it, whether research articles, personal notes, or transcripts from previous episodes. JellyPod, in particular, has been revolutionary. It can parse through all that data, pull out themes, and help me structure episodes in ways that align both with my expertise and my audience's needs.
Right. And it's not just the planning. I've played around with AI editing tools too. They're genius. Like they hear one awkward pause or my infamous laugh-snort combo and they're on it. It's a lifesaver for fine-tuning the final product without spending hours glued to the screen. I mean, who has time for that?
You're absolutely right. AI transforms the process, making podcasting not just efficient, but honestly less intimidating. For example, let's say something critical breaks in mental health news, new research, or legislation. With these tools, I can record thoughts, have them quickly refined, and share a full length podcast episode in hours. It's not about racing the news cycle, it's about staying relevant and impactful in real time.
Okay, let's just pause there because that's huge. The idea that you can react quickly. It's like your podcast becomes more than a platform. It's a megaphone for education, advocacy, even sparking change. No wonder you've become the go-to virtual psychiatrist for so many colleagues. It's like shaping dialogue in a way that wasn't possible even 5 years ago.
And not just dialogue, connection. Think about it, Teresa. The ripple effects from just one conversation can influence the mindset of a global audience. In my field, I speak directly to mental health professionals, policymakers, and patients. But the principles apply universally. Podcasting, especially amplified by AI, lets you carve a space in public discourse and, in some ways, redefine it.
Right? And I know you're a modest guy, but let's not downplay this. Your podcasts legit affect change, whether challenging misconceptions or inspiring innovation in telepsychiatry. And for me, AI doesn't just empower, it democratizes. Anyone, even the smallest voices, can produce quality content. It's about letting messages rise above the noise.
Absolutely. And when you consider how much you can achieve, the barriers to starting seem less intimidating. With the right tools and passion, any professional can create, share, and refine their ideas. And isn't that what podcasting is at its core? A way to transmit ideas with intention and heart?
Yep, and the tools are only getting better. But seriously, how did we ever survive with just napkins and a mic? All right. What's next on the docket, Doc?
Well, I'm glad you asked. You know, Teresa, something I've learned over the years is that creating meaningful content, whether a podcast or article, starts long before I hit the record button. For me, preparation is everything. Even when I'm using advanced tools like JellyPod to streamline, there's this whole creative process, the brainstorming, the refining, that shapes each episode.
And it totally shows, by the way. Like your episodes give off this ultra-prepared yet super personal vibe. How do you even juggle all that, though? Because between your clinical work and interviews, it feels like a full-time gig right there.
It can be a balancing act, no doubt. But platforms like JellyPod, they've genuinely been lifesavers. For example, let's say I'm piecing together insights from several sources: research, listener questions, even my personal notes. The software synthesizes it seamlessly, helping me focus on what really matters: connecting with my audience.
Okay, but let's get real for a second. Tools are amazing, but the sheer consistency you bring, that's something else entirely. Like, didn't Dr. Andrew Tisser say persistence is the secret sauce? Community engagement, patience, things that don't come packaged in fancy AI software.
Exactly. Andrew's advice is gold. He emphasized thinking long term, using podcasting to build not just an audience, but credibility and trust within your professional sphere. It isn't about overnight success, but planting seeds for impactful relationships.
Right? And networking too, right? I loved his take on using your podcast as a gateway to these unexpected opportunities. It's funny how the more you focus on creating value, the more the right people and connections just kind of gravitate towards you.
So true. Honestly, some of my own most rewarding experiences have stemmed from this very approach. Speaking opportunities, collaborations, they've opened doors I hadn't even considered before. Platforms like LinkedIn and SoMe Docs have been instrumental. amplifying those connections.
Yeah, and you've definitely made waves there. But for folks listening and thinking, okay, fancy LinkedIn pro here, but where do I even start? What's the first actionable thing someone can do?
I always tell people start by sharing your voice authentically. Use LinkedIn to post meaningful content, thoughts, summaries of podcast episodes, lessons learned from guests. It's less about self promotion and more about creating value. And joining communities like Somadocs? That's where conversations evolve into collaborations.
Ah, so thoughtful breadcrumbs. Got it. Seriously, though, the idea of intentionality, whether it's networking, podcasting, or prepping episodes, it just resonates. And let me say, from a listener's perspective, you've nailed what it means to build impact authentically.
Thank you, Teresa. And it's something every podcaster should aim for. Impact doesn't require $1 million budgets or flashy gear. It requires consistency, passion, and a genuine effort to resonate with your audience. If I can do it, anyone can.
Couldn't agree more. And as we wrap this up, to anyone listening, keep this in mind. Don't wait for perfection. Start messy, refine as you grow. And who knows, maybe you'll be the voice that someone didn't even know they were looking for.
Beautifully said, Teresa. And on that note, thank you to all our listeners for joining us today. Remember, podcasting isn't just about broadcasting, it's about connecting. Whether you're an aspiring creator or a seasoned one, your voice matters. And folks, remember, as my friend Norm Clement says, you are within the norms. Until next time with the virtual psychiatrist.
See you next time, folks, and hey, keep those creative vibes alive.